Philip.
Philip. I guess I can turn off his video as an admin.
Do it for him.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. We are very happy to welcome our guest of honor. And I will let them speak for themselves, what they do, and what their projects are of late. And Shay and I will be kind of like guiding you through this discussion. First of all, like Shay, you would like to say a few words about what this panel discussion is about before them introducing themselves?
Yes. Okay. Hi, guys. Thank you, all the speakers, for joining in. For the ones who don't know me, my name is Shay, and I'm the co-industry leader with Pebbles. So in order to start, perhaps it's good to just introduce what this open panel is about. It's about systemic change and power distribution. And mainly the discussion will explore the discourse of power structures across the world and how thought leaders build up systems that are resilient, they can promote diversity and foster the well-being of the people using them. And then the second part of this open panel, we would really like to ask how by rethinking our current structures, we're able to build up long-term positive and sustainable change. Yeah, that's basically the framework for this 1 hour and a half. Yeah, and just an important note, like it's just, this is the framework, but then the discussion, we are happy that it's organic and just like giving you the platform and the stage to say whatever is on your mind. Yes.
So also just to mention a little bit on the structure of how we're gonna have this discussion, like we might ask a question that invite all of you, the panelists, to partake, but not all of you need to answer to the same question. So, and also you are not necessarily talking to us, but you're also talking among yourselves. Like you could make a remark to the last panelist idea, or you can add on feedback. You can disagree if you like to, or add on to reinforce a certain point as much as you would like to. So let's keep it like a round table discussion. And later part in the end of the session, like we would open up the circle a little bit to invite some of the students to join this round table. So shall we begin? And for the students that just joined, if you don't mind, I'm going to shut down your video. Yes. So welcome. Very happy to have you here, and very excited as well that Basadi managed to join us and agree today, quite spontaneously. Very, very happy that you make your time to join this panel. And I would like to begin with you then. Like, would you like to share with everyone a few words of where you are at right now, your current project, and more importantly, the passion of your work and your purpose in that sense? Basadi? Yolanda?
Yes, hi. Hi. You can hear me, right?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, even though it was such short notice. I'm very happy to participate and learn as much as share also. So I'm in Botswana. I'm in a village, actually, I'm in my home village right now. It's called Kanye. It's in the southern part of Botswana. It's like 90 kilometers away from the capital city. So what I'm doing here is that I recently, actually, not recent, as of December last year, I came back from studying arts journalism, a master's of arts journalism in Syracuse University in upstate. So what I'm doing here is, on top of like contributing and working as a freelancer here and there, I'm also working in my community, and my work is mostly centered around innovation, arts, and sustainability. I am also right now on the board of the local museum here, which is also very humble, but I'm very excited to be part of that. And this is like a very timely conversation in that exploring those power dynamics and change. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to have you here. And Nadine from Berlin.
Hello, everyone. It's really amazing to be part of this panel. Thank you that I can join. Yeah, I'm based in Berlin right now, even though I wanted to be in the US, but I got stuck because of the pandemic. But it turned out to be a good kind of thing in the end. So I have been consulting internationally on strategic issues in business, innovation and product for a decade. And in 2016, I set up Germany's first IT developer bootcamp to address the talent shortage, but also to kind of help close the gender gap, specifically in the tech industry. And that was also the moment when I realized that I wanted to dig into sustainability and innovation, particularly innovation for sustainability. And I immersed myself since then into philanthropy and specifically the impact and investing industries across the world. Because for me, it's very interesting to see like which kind of dynamics across different industries are at play, so to speak, when it comes to systemic changes. But I also started back then to kind of engage over the climate crisis and the effects, like the socioeconomic effects of the climate crisis. And that basically also led me to launching the independent International She for Social Impact Awards this year, beginning of this year. Because I pretty early on found out that gender parity and gender diversity is kind of at the heart of achieving the Global Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And that's why the awards focus only on highlighting women from different regions and from different industries where they are currently still very much underrepresented. Because specifically talking to you guys, you know it, everyone here knows it, like we are facing not only the climate change or the climate crisis, but also we are at the verge of the digital transformation of our whole societies. And if we don't kind of take care of having really also women at the tables, so to speak, where decisions are made about our future and how it's designed, then there won't be any kind of chance to close that gap even further for women. So that's my kind of passion project. That's really what I'm committed to do in the long haul. Yeah.
Thank you. And whomever feels free to share. Shany? Hi, Shany.
Hi, how are you guys? I'm really excited to be here. I mean, it's very important to me to talk about the things that I believe in, and I'm a marketer. I have a master in interactive communication. And right now I'm at my office in Tel Aviv, which is the most amazing city on earth. Basically, I have a decade of experience, more than a decade of experience in this field. In the past 2 years, I've tried to work more with companies that share my values. For example, we're working with sustainability companies such as Netafim, which is a huge technology company in worldwide, basically from Israel, and they help the world to grow more with less. And they have a unique technology that helped them to basically use the irrigation and to grow more with less water and less land. And I'm really proud to be part of those projects. And on the other side, I really I feel very close to Nadine because we share the same also values. I here in Israel, the advertising industry is very tough for girls. And when I opened my own company, I have my own company now for the past 3 years. I am trying to help more women to be on the decision-making roles and help them to create a better voice of brands with all the values that we share. So right now, my company Brand New is 100% women, and that's it. I feel that the world should have a different approach, and I'm really excited to be here with you guys. So thank you so much, and Nadine, you rock. I really I think that I'm very connected to the things that you're doing, and good for you. Keep going.
Thank you, Shany. Very nice to already start feeling the good vibrations in this.
Yeah, I'm here for this.
Yay. Thank you. And Mahan, maybe before the next
Sure.
lady.
Sure.
Now you're outnumbered.
It's fine. It's fine. Hi, everyone. My name is Mahan. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Today in the morning, we had sort of a session, which was, I hope, fun for those who participated in it. So yeah, a brief introduction about myself. I am originally from Iran. Currently, I'm based in The Hague in the Netherlands. I'm working for Leiden University, Roches Institute for International Legal Studies. I'm a researcher on international humanitarian law, which is the law of armed conflict. So whenever you hear anything about Geneva Conventions, Hague Regulations, crimes against humanity, war crimes, genocide, those are the issues that I am dealing with, along with human rights law and violations of violations of human rights by perpetrators. Currently, I'm working on a project called IHL in Action, which is partly done by ICRC, the International Committee of Red Cross and Red Crescent, together with Leiden University. And in this project, which is kind of interesting, we believe that whenever we talk about war, we think about destruction of war and the crimes which can arise from war, but we don't remember that there are some legal frameworks that regulates the conduct of hostility and armed conflicts. And we believe that maybe by showing some positive and cases of compliance to this legal framework, we can show that the law works, and even in the darkest moment of history, when there is no rule applicable to conduct of human beings, there are some natural legal provisions which as human we have to obey them even when we are killing each other. So this paradox is something that interests me. Yeah, and looking forward to talk about all this melting pot and power and relations to power.
Thank you, Mahan. Very nice. And welcome, Yeliz.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation. Hope you can hear me good. Yeah, as you may have seen, like, he's back again. He's so curious to whom mom is talking again. I was running a design company for the last 5 years here in Vienna. And it was more or less an accident that I, let's say, entered the city. And for the last year, I was on maternal leave, and currently I'm trying to build my own company. And I'm super enthusiastic about connecting people coming from different cultures and creating stuff which will help us to create a better future. And when I came to Vienna and I took over businesses and the company here, what I realized that I urgently, or I was seeking for an environment which could be inspiring and integrating people who maybe have barriers coming from different cultures and so on. This was something I was super enthusiastic to build. I left a really good team behind, because then my son was born and things changed massively for me as a leader. Things also changed how I look onto the world. Now look, he's back again. And this will, sorry guys, this will happen a few times now, hop on and hop off. Yeah, and my main motivation in this discussion will be to talk with you guys about the challenges from teams and people with different background, different education, especially women, and how can things be easier in business life for us, for example, because I had my problems, and now I'm happy and I'm proud that I could make stuff and I could be in leading positions, and I could make decisions that I want to collaborate with a diverse team around, with creative people around, with different educational backgrounds as well. But somehow I realized that I was an alien with my thinking and my doing. And so for me, it would be interesting. This could be something which could be the new normal in terms of collaboration, also in, let's say, smaller markets like Austria, for example.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, everyone. We are very excited as well. Like we have a really bunch of good people here. And I also sense that everyone has that kind of true energy and belief in the work that you do, or we do. So I'm so glad again to have you here. So to begin with, since everyone actually is quite like, we're all located in a different city, different country, different culture. And like my first question is that, would change be a collective or individual effort? Like, for example, Ilan, Basadi, you are starting to build a museum for your village. And that is a beautiful thing that you're doing. And how do you kind of relate your purpose in wanting to do that? And is there any kind of like struggle, or is actually a good thing that you are just more or less focused in doing your very localized project against whatever systemic change that is happening in the world? Like, can you share a bit of that?
Sorry, can you repeat the last part of the question, please?
Can you share your motivation of your drive in starting as your personal project for your village and building the museum for them?
Okay. So my village is pretty small, but not, it's big relative to other villages, you know. So if you get here, you're not necessarily going to think it's a village because it's like 40,000 people. So my motivation really is that how do we improve the places that we stay without necessarily wanting to, or, you know, the want can be there, but how do we improve, or how do we rejuvenate, right, the places that we are inhabiting without necessarily, you know, looking outside and saying, because the reality is not everybody can go outside and make it in the world, you know. So I am a strong believer that opportunity should be harnessed wherever a person is. And if there is enough motivation, and that motivation is not only going to be born, it's going to be born by maybe, you know, people bringing in different ideas. Whereas if you maybe just like leave it up to saying, okay, we're all going to migrate to cities, or we're all going to not invest in the places that we come from, and, you know, find jobs. And a lot of young people are doing that because there's also, you know, a lot of challenges to living in places where maybe are not as urban as others. So my motivation really is that that one of rejuvenating the community and making it more attractive for, you know, people that can live here, because it's not only young people that live here. It's a whole community of individuals, and I'm blabbering a bit, sorry. So it's you know, it's a matter of just like bringing that community together, and you know, like incorporating everybody on a shared vision of this is where we are trying to take development, you know. But at the same time, a very important factor, especially when you're in the villages in like a more rural setup, is that you have to, there's, you know, there's different power dynamics of how you go about implementing change, and even just like, you know, building that community. You know, the Botswana is still very patriarchal, for example. So even in that wanting change, it's very imperative that you also incorporate, you know, all the different voices, so that everybody can see that they're not going to be left out, or maybe they are not threatened by what could potentially be. So that's like a big part of the motivation. And, you know, my village has a very, it has a very strong culture, right? It has a very, it's got a lot of stories which are not being told. And I think it's to everybody's benefit that we just like put those stories out there, and, you know, look at our own, I guess, heroes, or look at the people that were also doing things before us and how they did those things and what we can learn from those things. So for me, it's as much, that exploration of, my culture, and also moving forward, how do we imagine places that we live to be? Yeah, so. I don't know if I answered the question fully.
For sure, for sure. And
Yeah.
I do think like it is very admirable to be doing what you're doing. And because I guess the nature of your work is also incorporate like innovation and even like reimagining how data can be used to build better communities. So and challenges that you might face would be kind of like a luxury for people in like the Western culture, like maybe what is even data, even in the terms of like accessibility. This is something maybe like the rest of us would be very curious about, like how do you face this kind of like challenges that, yeah.
Okay. So Botswana, I think as recent as like maybe 2 years ago, committed to, align with itself with the fourth industrial revolution, which is like a necessity for everybody, really. And it's also, it's also worth mentioning that Africa has in many ways, this is like the story that's always been said, like it has in many ways leapfrogged a lot of technologies that in the West maybe are not, in the West could be implemented, but because of a lot of rules and regulations and whatever, in Africa they're being implemented. So just like tapping into that is, like it's an important aspect of the story, but at the same time, the other side of the story is that there's like a huge digital divide. There is, here, basically with my router, for example, which I'm using right now, I go around with it because almost everywhere I go, there's no internet connection, right? So like, just like on a very basic level, that's still like a very big issue of how do we talk about like a fourth industrial revolution when the digital divide is still very wide. So that's definitely a challenge. But the good news is a lot of, especially young people, have access to smartphones. The little data that people put on their phones, but data in terms of like the ones the data that can use to access the internet. People still use those devices to connect with each other. So the important thing, I think, and the important thing that we try to do here, especially like I live not very far from like a secondary school and a primary school. So one of the things that I've been talks with the school leadership is that how can we build programs for at least like, young people to get into things like coding and all the other aspects that are going to make us align better with the objective of government and also, like the overall objective, because at the end of the day, that is where everything is leading up to. And I think getting left behind at this very crucial stage is one that would lead to those skewed power dynamics, because technology is like such an important thing. And then, everybody needs to be involved in building the technology. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. And just a side note, again, like the rest of the panelists, you could also make a follow-up comment or a question, Basadi, according to her story. Like it doesn't have to be like a back and forth with the host. And I would like to ask the rest of you as well, like, how do we or should we expend energy towards individual change? Or is it better to spend organizing systemic change? If any of you would have your thoughts on it.
Maybe I can comment on it. It's a very interesting topic to discuss, especially for me. The reason is that we recently had a campaign in Iran on women's rights. Actually, when we are talking about women rights and women issues in Iran, particularly, we are talking about basic things. We are not talking about the wage gap yet. We are not talking about, for example, the right to women's body, like abortion and all other stuff. We are talking about compulsory hijab. We are talking about women who are forbidden to ride bicycle or ride motorcycles, and women or enter to stadiums, and women in Iran are fighting for that. So that was a side note, just a brief introduction on what is the situation in that country and what is the struggle of women in that country. So last week, a girl, a very brave girl in one of the most conservative cities in center of Iran, hopped on her bicycle and went out and ride in the city without hijab, without a veil, and also, yeah, ride on the bicycle. And she was arrested by the police. The same evening, a bunch of fanatics came to the street protesting her devil action, as they call it, and demanded from the government to take action and prevent such events to take place in other cities. So right after that incident, the whole country was debating whether the action of the girl was good or bad, in a way that half of the country were saying that instead of coming to the street, exposing herself, making it a political issue, that girls should have organized a team of women cyclists within that conservative city, and in that way, changing the culture from the bottom. But the other half were saying that we have tried this since 1979 after the Islamic Revolution, and it's not gonna happen, nothing is gonna change, and we need brave figures, individuals, to come to the street, to expose themselves, to put the debate on the table for discussion. And yet, honestly, personally, I had such a debate with my own father. He was in favor of the first option, and I was in favor of second option. And the question that you ask is kind of remind me of this situation in this unique context that we have. Either we should work on building a community to endeavor change, or either we should go on individual level and be the martyr of, for example, freedom in this case. Which one is beneficial and which one is not? The argument of those who are in favor of the first option, building from the bottom, are saying that, okay, after she did this, no woman can ride a bicycle because the government is now more serious about this issue, and they are preventing those who were already trying to secretly ride their bicycles. But the question is, if a right is suppressed, should we continue living with our little privileges or secret privileges, or should we go hand to hand with that hero that we are advocating for? So it can be a question for the rest of the panel, but indeed reminded me of this incident, and it's a very interesting question to ask, whether it is an individual effort or it should be a collective effort.
Thank you.
Can I ask, did someone ask this girl, like, what was her reasoning or what she thinks about that?
No, because since then she is in custody and no one has any access to her. Mm-hmm. So it's basically impossible to know her motives, but of course, people are judging. Some of them are saying that she wanted to become famous so she can leave the country and ask for asylum in Europe. Very, very naive interpretation of the act, I would say, or some of it, or the regime itself, the government is claiming that, of course, he was paid by the US, UK, or Israel, or Saudi Arabia, all the
Can I add something?
Sure.
I mean, at first when you express about this story, I just felt the same, because I believe that we live in a world of everybody want to be famous and want to be a presenter of something, rather it's a brand or a value or some, I don't know, kind of starting a revolution. And I think we should take this as a message, because if we will use this kind of social behavior of our generation, I mean, it's not like my employees are in a different generation than I am. I mean, today I just talked about the fact that I had a Walkman and they didn't know what it is. And I think that if we would take benefits from this social behavior and create those little, influencers, that we can make a change both ways, like creating an individual to do something in order to influence the whole situation. So I agree and disagree about that fact. I mean, I still think that honestly, I don't know what's her age and if she have any social media. I don't know. I don't really understand the case, but I will check it out because it's really interesting, the motivation. And if we speak about motivations, I think this is a really good point that we can actually create the change within individuals through the community. So it's very sad though, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to add, because I think there is both things need to go together, because there have always been people who question social standards and social norms, and they would become like the leading actors, so to speak, and only after a time, when it resonates with a lot of people within their own kind of communities and closer circuits, then the chances are higher that the thing that somebody kind of communicates first and complains about or wants to kind of change, then this topic will kind of hit, and also the majority kind of accept it and the dialogue starts. So I think like systemic changes never come from the top, never come from the community as a whole, but you need to kind of, like in trend analysis, you need to kind of have your ear at the basic kind of level and the roots, so to speak, like who are the people who think differently, who question things, who ask what is really still relevant in the future or not, how to kind of develop as societies. And we all have experienced it, and Shany and Mahan, they also refer to it, like we know it from ourselves and our youth, our discussions with our parents. They have completely different mindsets because they have been raised differently. And for us, what is normal to us might not be normal to the younger generations either. So I think like once you identify people like individuals in communities and bigger networks that start the dialogue, so to speak, to open up the discussions, that's where you need to kind of help and support if you resonate also with this new kind of idea, or if you resonate only with having a discussion and kind of open up some new perspectives. And then once you hit momentum, then the community kicks in.
Nadine, I have one question. You said something really, really interesting. You said like, this doesn't come from the top. This is insofar interesting because when I look at my own experience, I needed someone from the top who can help me to, let's say, empower myself, like coming back to the initial question, like is change a collective approach or an individual? I believe that you need both. First of all, you need to somehow empower yourself, step up. But I needed a person on my side who helped me to step up. And this would be an interesting question to, or impulse to further discuss with you.
I totally hear you and what you mean. But I think you need to distinguish case by case. And in your case, it is more like you were the change maker, or you kind of gave the impulse, right? And the person you asked for empowerment didn't share your perspective and might have not come up with this idea that you presented to him or her. And that's very common also in business or in politics. If you don't really have strong opinion-minded leaders who can enforce change or who can rally the crowds and the allies around them. But I've never really seen it that change, like really amazing positive change, comes only from one person at the top. But again,
Absolutely.
like you need to, it always depends on your situation and where you are at in any kind of network. And I really find it amazing that you ask also for empowerment, because it needs to be synchronized, so to speak, because he can speak, or he or she or he, I don't know about the gender in your case of that person. He is a different type of personality, so he can also talk to the people that you also need to make this idea come true, completely different than you would be able to.
Can I add something? I just wanted to warn that, yeah, as someone mentioned in the comment, they should go hand to hand, the individual effort, the collective effort, because honestly, we are living in a world which there is a very huge danger for individualism, even more than before. Now you mentioned influencers, and but even before that, when we were, nowadays we have heroes from the civil rights movement who are always individuals, and or from other movements, political movements in the modern history. But when, for example, let's take the civil rights movement as an example, we all know Martin Luther King as the leader of that movement, and we have King's Day in the US, so we have national public holidays dedicated for him in his honor. And everyone, when he talks about Dr. King, he's talking about a hero. Of course, he was a hero, but the way that I see it is, again, a very market-driven strategy, because the market always tend to put individuals first and show that, okay, yeah, we have heroes in the form of individuals, and you have to be them if you want to be someone. So you always have to use them as role model and try to become like them, but they don't show the whole movement behind them. They never show the people who march with Martin Luther King before him even were trying to advocate for changes. And then that's why when Martin Luther King is gone, the whole movement can collapse, because then the whole system should focus on one person and not the movement. And when that one person is gone, the whole movement is gone as well. And also, I just want to talk about the top in this way, that political decision is always important and it always comes from the top. So we don't have any changes without a political decision. Probably in the same case with civil rights movement, the role of Lyndon Johnson is as important as Martin Luther King, because he was putting that pen on that paper and signed the Bill of Rights. So it is very important to know that we cannot achieve literally anything without a political decision and a political agenda, which comes from the top. Women, the case that I presented, women of Iran, they can fight this government and this regime for the next 100 years without a political change, without a political decision, without a political will. Their fight will not go anywhere. There should be a pen on the paper and a signature.
I want to add something to Mahan thoughts, if I may. I think that, first of all, I think you're right in a way that if we're talking about the people, so as a human, it's very easy to connect to a story of a guy or a girl instead of a whole bunch of stories that create a community. And I think that even the media, I mean, right now we have the social media, etc. But even the old media, they're looking for the story. They're looking for the hero, as you said. So I really think that you're right that when we have the individual, it can spread out, because this is how story can spread all over the place, because they get the stage to be up front. And it's about, I think it's about a good story and a really good storytelling in order to make it pop out and spread all over. So we need the individual too, and I believe that it's very important that we have people with courage and other people that will maybe help them to get the courage and to be the one that leads the revolution.
So can I ask if, in that sense, the power to change, is it a privilege?
Very short answer, yes. Because I think either somebody has earned the position to be in power and to kind of act on power, or it's inherited. And once, in both cases, I think it's a privilege. So if I got your question correctly.
Mahan?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah, it's definitely a privilege, I would say. And those who have it, they should, and they have a moral responsibility to use it. Because, for example, those who are living in asylum, I know it's not only about countries which are famous for human rights violations, but nowadays we are seeing a lot of migrants from Turkey, from Israel, from all those countries which they not used to send people out because of the political changes. People are choosing to live outside, and so they are in a very unique position to advocate for those who are inside and be their voice. And it is their moral responsibility to use their freedom.
Thank you. And I would like to hear from Basadi again, like to discuss on the idea of privilege. And how would you feel like in the situation? Is she gone? Yeah, you're here. So can you discuss and share your opinion towards this counter privilege of maybe a Western society or the white privilege against the project that you're doing? Do you see that it's important or it's actually irrelevant because you can just be very focused in a very localized project and work that as long as you're doing and running your passion project right, maybe it doesn't really matter? Or how do you feel about that?
So I think that even if I didn't want it to matter, there was no way it couldn't matter, because at the end of the day, we are living in a globalized society. So that even like in my very far off, village in Botswana, I am still very much in touch with what's happening out there, the remnants of which are also visible in my home village, right? We like many African countries were colonized by the British. Actually, the place where the museum is currently at right now is a former house. It's the former house of a commissioner who was white. There is a hall in my village called King George, who is obviously white. So even if the centering wasn't on, what's happening around the world, it's still in one way or the other affecting what's on the ground, right? And then also the other issues that in establishing this museum, like what informs the structures, right? Who do you look up to see how museums have been done before? And most of the time you're looking at, big museums in like New York City or, museums around the world. So you're also looking at those structures and seeing how they can inform what you're doing in your own space or where you are. Can you expand a bit on the question again? I keep on losing the questions.
Oh, no worries. I think it's like the question here is about the privilege. Like, do you feel like maybe share a bit about if there's any point of time there is an imbalance of privilege, like because of power itself? And like you are the local hero, for the work that you are doing, and to share the stories of the unheard, the voiceless in the museum and the community that you're building for. So in that sense, when you are putting your heart and energy into the project you're doing, does everything else that happen in the rest of the world really matters to you in this point of where you're at and the work you do? Or is there like a wish for a better privilege to kind of assist and empower you even more for the work you do? Or it doesn't matter?
No, I think it definitely does matter. As I've explained, we're very much also still part of the community, and the stories of the past are still very influential in today in the different institutions in Botswana. So I think it's not a matter of just like operating on your own, but of course, the privilege here, is that the power now is with the local people. So we're able to formulate and visualize the kind of institution that we want without necessarily, because sometimes if the influence, like maybe monetary influence, for example, is going to maybe dictate how the structures or even like the content of the museum looks like. But at the moment we are operating independently, but at the same time, looking at outside for the lessons that can better inform how the museum can run.
Can I ask a question on that note from you, Basadi? Where do you usually get your fundings? Are they from the local sources or international sources?
We are currently looking, because those are some of the structures that we're looking into. Because most of the time, if you look at other African countries, first of all, Botswana is considered middle income. So in terms of funding, we are not considered because we're considered a country which can fend for itself. So for the moment, we are looking, and as we're building the structures, because also I'm not an individual, even here as I'm speaking, I'm not necessarily speaking as the museum, I'm speaking just like based on my own experience, right? And what could happen going forward, So I think that the important thing is also to just kind of look at how community itself can take part, take part in also like the raising of funds, for example, for that ownership and saying that, this is also our museum. So in that way, it's not necessarily, it doesn't always have to look outside, because looking outside also comes with its own consequences. So, okay, there's a fly.
No problem. No, the reason that I asked this question was because, as you mentioned, with receiving funds, you will receive some sort of framework to work in. And I was wondering, when it comes to privilege, now you're talking about the privilege that you have to work independently. And then if you, for example, get a funding from a specific donor with specific requirements, you have to follow those requirements, and how you feel that you're kind of trading your privileges with the privileges which the donor who has the money is going to impose on you. You know what I mean? How do you think in such a sort of situation you can balance this to achieve your goals and also not losing your privileges as an independent actor in your community?
Yeah, I think that's like, that's a constant conflict really in any organization. Like how do you balance that, right? So I think the thing that you can do as an institution or like an individual, you could be an individual applying for an ag grant, for example. You probably want to choose a place which has a history of to ask for the funding, a place that has like a track record of, I'm not going to steal away your privileges. I am still going to let you dictate however you want this. It has to be like a symbiotic relationship, not somebody overpowering the other person. So I think you have to look at organization and individuals and how they're aligned with your own mission and the vision that you want to accomplish, I think. But it's definitely, it's there's going to be tension there. It's going to be like a constant tension.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm actually really curious, especially when you just spoke about the organization, and I wonder, like, what is the mission of the museum in terms of like its purpose? Like, how do you see it? Like, do you see it as a time capsule, as something that preserve like the stories of the local community and of the place, or perhaps this space can become some sort of an arena for empowering change and for actually empowering people, and that the space become a change agent by itself? And I'm also wondering, like, how do you balance this, or what are the steps that are taken in order to achieve either or both missions?
So right now, as I said, we're at very humble beginnings. We're at a level where we are still like conceptualizing. The museum has been there, right? But it's never really been able to serve in its full capacity. It hasn't been able to serve in the extent that it could be like an agent for change, right? So I think it's like a balance. It's that it's that institution for history, as you said, like that time capsule, and also there to serve as like an empowering. I think the role at the moment and in the foreseeable future, it's going to be that. I think it's going to be this balance, mainly because also in the village there's not a lot of how can I call them? There's not a lot of outlets, right? There's not outlets for creativity, and there's not also a lot of outlets for connecting with culture, right? It has like a very important role that can play in our society. So I think it's like a balancing act. It's a balance between that housing, like that important history of the people, and also empowerment, right? We get people coming in all the time. Like, I see this place, we get people coming in wanting to maybe donate some things, or, they feel moved to want to see the museum going further. So in that way, I guess like the general feeling in people is just that, this is such an important institution, and seeing it thrive and survive would mean a lot to people, and the change will be manifested in different ways, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. And I have another question that I'm really curious about, because you said that the location where the museum is, it was its base, it was the house of a white commander. And I'm really curious, like how, if this wide identity of the location and the past of it, like how is this influence your mission, or influence also the design or the narrative that you're trying to build there? Like, is it even influencing it, or it's just like a kind of a past that is not being considered?
Yeah, that's a great question, also tying into what's been said about individual versus like community change, right? So I guess for me, like my privilege would be coming from, okay, so I have the exposure maybe to like like higher education, to living outside Botswana and blah blah blah, if that's a privilege, right? So there's that aspect of the story. There's like what I would like to see the museum to be. There is how I would like the museum to acknowledge that past, not as like a very beautiful thing, so like even the history of colonialism, I think in Botswana, and I'd speak on Botswana, and specifically my home village, like when I'm talking to people in the community, or my family, or whoever, the history of of colonialism is not shunned upon. People are not like, oh, King George was such an asshole. Look, a George was a hall was named after him, or whatever. But I would think that, right? I would think, oh wow, I mean, how does this white guy end up having this hall named after him, when the other aspects also in my culture that were destroyed because the British intervened, or the British forced themselves upon the people? The history's there. But we don't always look at the history the same way, you know? Others would think maybe, you know, they did something that was positive, but I have my own ideas. So I think it's just like a balancing act between my own views and my own vision of how I'd want the stories and the narratives to be told, and how, you know, because even in the constitution of the museum, there's like different actors, you know, there's the elders of the village, there's the chief of the village, there is other stakeholders. So what's their opinion on, you know, what's their opinion on how events transpired in the past, and how would they want those experiences to be factored in as we're, you know, drawing up, yeah.
Thank you, Basadi. Like,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I would like to ask also Nadine, Shany, and also Yeliz. Of course, if Mahan and Basadi have opinions on this, please jump in. We would like to discuss maybe a bit about the gap. So there is a wealth gap, there's gender gap, and there's racial gap. So like in this world that we are living in, there are so many gaps for basically in the work we do, whether from the global level to the individual level. So how can we create narratives or stories to close the gap? Shany?
I can just, I mean, try to understand my own story and to share my own story about the gap. I'm 31, almost 32, and I've been in the advertising industry for the past 12, 13 years. And when I started, I just had a friend of my mother. She told me like, okay, I have a good role in this company, and I got a higher level role, and I can get you in. And it was a huge global company, and she helped me to get in. And I was very young and very curious about it, but all I can saw back then was you know, like men on higher level role and positions. And I think that I try to manage my own gap. I didn't understand that it's like behind, like it's a global thing, because I was very young. I didn't understand that I'm getting inside a room and I'm the only creative person who was a girl. And when I understand this, when I try to understand, and I felt very confused about it, like why I'm the only one here standing here and try to communicate and try to express my own thoughts about the campaigns and so on, and nobody's listening. Like I was very frustrated back then. I was totally, I didn't know what to do. And I think the first thing that when I realized that that there is a gap, I went to my mother and she's a very independent woman, and she told me like, you need to stick on your feet, you need to stiffen up, you need to be to demand those things in order to be the one that everyone in the room wants to listen to. So at first it wasn't easy, and I've tried very hard to do this. And the only thing that I really have in my memory is I didn't experience only a gender gap. I have here in Israel, we have like also kind of a racism about people that have like Jewish Arab culture, and I have Tunisian roots, and my last name is like Hadad, and it's a kind of strange here, and I think that the first step that I made in order to change this gap, like the most influential for me was I had a campaign which I wrote on my name, like everybody knows that I has the one behind it, and my CEO called me to the office in front of all the managing team and told me that we need to change the name, the last name, in order to make it, more global. And I just asked myself, like, sorry of my, pardon my French, but I worked my ass off on this campaign. Like I've tried so hard, and I was very young. I mean, nobody listened to me. And after that, I worked so hard on this, everybody wanted to go on air with my idea. And then when it got noticed out there, they want to change the credit and the name behind it, because there another gap that I needed to be to succeed. So in that meeting, I told them that I'm gonna quit this job, and I'm not gonna let this behavior continue to the next generation.
Sorry, Shany, your mic just went.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? So to make long story short, I just told them that I'm going to quit right away. And I felt very, this is the tipping point where my story began, because I really think that from that point till today, I don't act like this with my employees. I'm always trying to reducing the gap by mentoring my employees, my students. I'm a lecturer in 2 universities here in Israel, so I'm trying to help them to be more powerful and not too afraid from their roots, because I'm very proud of my roots, even if it's like it's not okay with other people. And my gender, of course, I born that way, and I love my personality and my gender, and I feel like I don't need to apologize. And we are in a creativity world, not as a marketeer. Everybody's here and is a creative person in a way, and I think like we need to educate. I feel that education is key for everything.
Right.
And that's it.
Thank you, Shany. And that I'm going to point to Nadine, and Yeliz can possibly comment after what Nadine would share, because that's what exactly Nadine's work is about, to create a platform to promote, a voice for women in innovations. And maybe Nadine can share a bit, like, what is your narrative?
So the narrative is really, what has been done in the past is we don't use 50% of actually kind of human capital, in a sense, leaving out women. And again, like when it comes to changing or designing the new tools, the new digital worlds and operating systems, so to speak, for the future in which we all are going to live, then we need to incorporate women from the very bottom to the top, and throughout different industries. And the reason why I designed the awards the way it is right now, like across different industries, across different regions, is really to showcase there are so many different challenges, and for instance, poverty means something completely different in one single country in Africa compared to one in Southeast Asia, or even here in Europe, we have a lot of poverty issues. So to really kind of change the perspectives, and I think like it really comes, or to change the narrative, you need to kind of showcase first what's the actual status quo right now. And you can easily do this, and it's most powerful when you visualize data and statistics so that people really kind of sense it, feel it, even get shocked or get emotional about it. But this is where you really start the journey of changing the narrative. And what I also experienced, the stereotypes that we have across our societies in diverse on diverse topics, they start already in our childhood. Like, what is it? What's in our books? What's written in our books that we present to our children? No matter if it's a boy, if it's a girl. What are the stories that we are telling ourselves, telling our children, and how we kind of treat each other, no matter at what age and what kind of position it is. Again, like it's shared value. It's a shared value system that we all kind of buy into. And if we don't question whether this is still a nice stereotype to have in the future, then we can't change the narrative. And for me personally, I'm always driven to change or implement as much as possible diversity, to really make people, or to help people understand the complexity of issues. And that's why, again, like I find this panel here also very interesting and exciting to kind of listen to you all here from different regions, and also with different backgrounds, and definitely a different viewpoint. And that makes it actually, that's when the magic happens, and that's when we start to feel compassionate for one another and to kind of think about things differently. But again, like I feel like education and communication is the top. Like this is really what needs to be done in the first place to change the narrative.
Yeah, I totally agree with Nadine, and I really like what she's telling about integrating women and all the facts and figures around. My motivation is that I want to lead by example, also help other women, young women in business life, really to raise their voice, to step up, and in every project I take over, at least I look carefully at the teams, that they are diverse, and that it is allowed that they come from a different culture, and then they have experienced different things in their life. And also coming back to the discussion with the privileges, I wouldn't consider myself as a privileged person. My parents come from the working class. I was born in Turkey. I grew up in Germany, so I had somehow difficulties to get my roots into the German culture, and until now, I still realize a really funny situation. Now I can laugh about those situations, but sometimes they're not funny at all. That I enter the meeting room, and in the German-speaking countries, you don't immediately realize that I'm a woman because my name could be anything. And the feeling is that they are pretty surprised that a woman with my roots, my heritage, can be in a leading position. And in the beginning of my career, I was really nervous when I entered the rooms because I somehow felt that I need to defend myself. But the more I stepped up, raised my voice, the more I was empowered, self-empowered, the easier it was for me. So my motivation for the future will be that I really help also other companies. It's not necessarily my team I'm closely working with, but also for large industries to help those teams and people just to step up and see that they can close the gaps in terms of wealth, gender, and race.
Yeah, if I may give a minor comment on this, yeah, thank you very much for all this amazing words, and I agree, as if I can speak as a male figure here from the other side of the debate. I'm just talking from my personal experience, coming from different culture and different contexts in which the gender roles are very defined, and you cannot get out of that box of gender roles pretty easy. But what influenced me since childhood and later in my life was the representation of women in my life. My mother was a teacher. I was always among women who were working in different positions. And then I became active in the society, and I happened to have female bosses or female professors, or wherever I was going, a woman was in charge. So by seeing them, that gap somehow never created in my head, or if it was created, because it's inherently there, it was by nature not a big gap, at least. So when I changed my environment, I could melt in easier, and not having a sort of a cultural shock because of the representation of women in a different cultural context. And also I can see that it can be helpful even now, as women claim offices, as women do different technical things, whether it's becoming an astronaut or becoming a football champion. It gives a very good example for all those children around there to see that there is no difference basically between us.
Thank you.
Can I just add on, because I really find it funny, here in Germany over the past weeks, there is this discussion about a quota for gender ratio in supervisory board positions and in board positions in general for publicly listed companies. And it's really interesting to see, like, this movement has been going on for over 30 years now. So in the past, companies have never been legally obliged to fill the positions with women. So it was all voluntarily, or on a voluntarily basis. And only 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago already, there was a new study, like we have this yearly study, that was published, and it showcased that during Corona pandemic, some board positions were even kind of filled up with men. So the ratio, the number of women goes down in times of crisis, because men, they kind of stick to what we already know, like the secret or like the safe haven, so to speak. And there is another studies from Albright Foundation that gives a little bit more international context to it. And it showcases that Germany, even though we have a chancellor, like a female chancellor for decades, we are not at the top of the list. So the Scandics, they are definitely leading when it comes to closing the gender gap. And a country like Germany, where you consider, wow, this must be really forward thinking. It's a modern company with a female head at their state. It's absolutely the difference. It's like only 12% of roles and board positions are filled with women, and it's decreasing also, and specifically during times of crisis. So I think, like, speaking only of the gender gap, there are definitely way more gaps to discuss. But it's just like so striking to me, and I find it like, wow, I can't explain. So now they are discussing if the policymakers should step in and make it mandatory to fill at least 30% of the board roles of publicly listed companies with females, with women, to have role models and to kind of, yeah.
Here in Israel, we're doing the same. I mean, we saw the decreasing of the number of women while the pandemic, and every open position in the government offices, we're doing like a huge campaign here with the social media on some communities that like feminist communities here in my area, and we're getting there. I mean, we started to create this loud and clear and demand those actions, and yeah, I really believe that we need to do this up front, and on the pandemic, basically there are tons of situations that a government that led by woman was acting more irrational about the solutions and solving the problem without pressure, but logically, and understand both sides of the coin. The people, the pandemic, also the financial issues, and so on. And we need to keep going on that, and to create this even situations on those kind of offices.
Thank you, Shany. I have a question from Sumbu, whom is actually our program manager of Hyper. So her question would be, why would it be easier, let's say when we are talking about diversity, why is it easier to talk about gender diversity than race diversity? Why is the discussion harder when we start to talk about colors or race?
Why is it hard? Why is it harder to discuss gender or to discuss the racial? Okay. I think like that's the main. How do you say, like? It's shared across the world, right? Like that's what unites us, the sexes, so to speak. And then of course you have the Black Lives Matter movement, racial discussions. That's a way more complex and difficult system designed into the operating system. When you dissect the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a lot of research already done how it systematically went to where it is right now. I can also bring up some examples even here with Germany, because I was born in the eastern part. We have experienced also strange things that one can easily also say, like a minority of a population. It's really I think like this is the common denominator where everyone can kind of easily connect over when it comes to closing any kind of gap. And again, like there are way more gaps to close.
I am wondering, do you think that if we close the gender gap, this will influence to close also the racial gap? Do you think
Yes.
that they're actually dependent on each other?
I think, I truly believe so. I mean, like there are no studies around it that prove it yet, but since politics, like you see gender disparity the strongest in politics. And I think, or I believe that once men in power really accept a woman, like a powerful woman, within their near kind of field next to them, the dialogues, the perspectives become super different then. And then we also discuss race, and we discuss then diversity on its next kind of level. And again, like here in Germany, I'm also part of a movement, like a network, without a leader on top. So we really do research around exactly those topics, like what it is to be like an inner country immigrant, like East and West, and also how racial kind of issues were portrayed. But I think like whenever you talk to minorities, there's also a sense of feeling compassionate for one another. And you just need to bring everyone, or you just need to create the opportunity to kind of meet or let them meet to kind of change perspectives and drive the discourse in a different way. And then again, like it's very hard to, how do you say, we all experience it right now in the US, right, with the Democrats and the Republicans. It's not a democracy almost any longer, because the companies have taken over the political realms, and that's when it becomes very difficult. And that's when you can also compare it to countries where you have very strong leaders on top, where there is almost no democracy in place. And so, yeah, it's very complex.
I'm also wondering, actually, for all the speakers, like talking about, how actually like the corporate world is influencing politics, and we can definitely see it at the moment in the States. So what is your opinion about like how can we use the corporate sector or the business sector in order to flatten the curve, in order to create more flat organizations that there is no hierarchy, and then everyone are quite equal?
Okay. Sorry, before that, just a side note that I've invited Sumbu to turn on her video. So because she has some comments that she would love to contribute. So there she is. Yeah.
Welcome, Sumbu.
Hello, hi. I don't know, should we proceed with your question, Shay? Because my comment was on the other question about about gender and race. How do you?
So,
yeah, perhaps you can continue, since it's on the same topic, maybe of the last comment or the last discussion, feel free to add on, then we move on to Shai's question.
No, because I was thinking, and maybe I misunderstood, but like for me, I don't agree that just because we're going to have like a gender, like a, how do you say, a smaller gender gap, that we're going to achieve like race diversity? Because for me, it's like, yes, they're connected to each other, but they're also like very different things. So like we also see, for example, in feminism, where we have women gaining rights, which is very good, of course, but then it's always this hierarchy, and which race is always like evident in that like it will be, for example, white women gaining their rights over Black women, for example. So I just wanted to point, like, in my opinion, I don't think it's the same thing just because women, or there would be like a smaller gender gap, for the reason because we don't talk about race.
Maybe I would like to kind of clarify what I meant earlier. I think like once you have more women in power, no matter what color and race, the discussions become different. And it's not like overpowering somebody else or other groups so much as it is right now. I think because we as a women, when we come from a place where we have to fight also for our own rights, then it's not so much, in a long-term perspective, it's not so much about sheltering myself as a, let's say, European or white woman off from other kind of women with a different heritage and origin, because we went through the same, basically. And I think when I look at the younger generations, they want also this kind of narrative. They want this kind of future, because we more and more experience a globalized society empowered through digital media like we are using now. And I really find it's a privilege for me to listen to Elsang's story right now from her village in Botswana. When would I have the opportunity to experience this? And I think like the more you create those spaces, even on a digital level, the more you prevent even this potential outcome that women themselves, they would kind of fight against each other or somehow.
That's where I don't agree, because I think like power is very complex and it's very individual as well. Like even me as a Black woman, say that if I would gain more power and I'm, how do you say, able-bodied, like how will I be towards people who don't have a normative body, so to say? So I don't think power is connected to just because I've been oppressed, therefore I am better at like allowing other people in the sphere. Maybe it could give me some certain of humbleness, but I don't think it's enough to change structures. Like if I think, for example, I'm just going to take the States as an example, like when the feminism was there, like you would see like white feminism gaining their power and white women starting to work, but then they would hire, for example, Black nannies. So like it wasn't a feminism that was for everyone. It was like for certain people within a hierarchy. And that's where I mean, like, even within gender, the race is always evident there, but we never, like, rarely talk about it.
Totally. I also agree, but I think, like, I truly believe that it's going to change over the next decades, I think. And that's also driven by us women ourselves.
Can I add something, if I may, about this? I am agreed with Sumbu, and I am slightly in disagreement with Nadine, because I definitely believe that they are interconnected, but they are not the same thing at all. And with rights comes privilege, and power. And power, the other side of the power is protection. Protecting your interest, your rights, and your what you have, your assets, again. And if you look at history, these issues are always interconnected. I take the example of the famous classic movie exactly about the race, The Birth of Nation, which is about KKK and the rise of KKK as a glorified thing. That movie was first screened in the White House at the presence of Woodrow Wilson as the president of the US, and Woodrow Wilson praised the movie as a very good example of evidence of history. But what that movie shows is that Black guys and even Black women are a threat to white women. And actually the reason that KKK come to the scene is to protect the rights of white women in the cities in America against those Black vandals. So you can see that here we see a society wants to empower its own women, but only our women, not their women, because we are distant and we still consider them as an issue. So the struggle is there, but the outcome is totally different. So I cannot say that by empowering a group of society, a marginalized group of society, we automatically empower the other group, because that group will become dominant, and by gaining those privileges, they become protective and they try to protect themselves and their rights.
I think the biggest learning that we have over the next decade is to learn from, I'm a bit esoteric here, I think, but when we learn from biology sort of, and I'm a strong believer in balance and ecosystems and balance. And it's not, I think, it's not going to happen that one is taking over power of the other group, but it's more like understanding that there's actually much more prosperity possible if there is much more balance between the different people, different communities, and also different, even trade organizations, when you want to kind of explore that area. But again, like once we as societies and our generation and also the younger generation understand that what we are taught or what's written in our books or what we see in our books, this is going to shape us in the near future. And I think like when we understand it already now that we need to change it, then there is definitely a possibility that mankind can change. Kind of. And
Sure.
To your point, like I know gender diversity is not comparative and comparable with racial issues, and to kind of overcome those gaps.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, it's like I was just wondering what Ilang Basadi thinks about this, but of course, Shay, you can.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I really have to go, but I just wanted to say that it was so interesting, and I'm very happy that I met you guys, and wish everybody a great future for all of us. So thank you so much for inviting me. And
Thank you, Shay.
Thank
bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you, Shay. Yeah, and on that note, maybe just on the facilitation mention that it was scheduled to 5. Though I see this is a very interesting discussion, and only just so everyone notes, if you have to leave, feel free. But if you would love to take this discussion for another like 15 minutes more or something, let's just stay here. And then for the rest of the class, whom are still very interested to listen to the panel, you can also just remain or otherwise exit the room silently as you like. So, but till far, thank you so far for all of your participation. Is there anyone of the panelists have a dying need to leave right now?
I have to go as well. I can't keep Tiny Man calm anymore. So I'm in charge as a mom again. And thank you so much for having me. It's a super great discussion, and I would love to catch up anyhow. All the other guys, see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Yeliz.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah. So then, yes, we can continue the discussion in a more intimate way. And I also at some point would love to invite some students, if you really please like to join as a panelist, I'm going to do a fishbowl that I will exit, and I will be listening as a silent spectator. But if any student would like to jump in, please let me know. And I would like to ask Nasra, if you would like to turn on a video, feel free, because you also have some good points that maybe you can elaborate. Okay, continue. Shay, you might have a question.
Yeah, I was actually like hearing to what Sumbo was saying, and I really agree with her, and actually like adding also to what Mahan was mentioning, like it's always it's like always a tricky question, because I'm always wondering, you know, about this question of solidarity and what creates solidarity. And I'm always actually looking, you know, at this very famous conflict between Israel and Palestine. And to actually like think that, you know, Jewish people for centuries were prosecuted, were oppressed, and then they arrive to Israel and suddenly it's like they are on the other side of history. And now, without getting into political discussions or like really, you know, it doesn't really matter of whose side you are, but I'm always questioning, like, you know, if this happened to someone, so how come these people don't learn that they cannot do it for someone else? And that's what really concerned me, because I'm afraid that, you know, if this is the narrative that is being built, it can really reduce or become redundant. And then that's where people are losing, they're not educating themselves. And yeah, and that things are just being taken for granted. And yeah, because I was just listening, it was really important for me to say, because I really agree with what Mahan was saying, that no, it's a very dangerous game to kind of depend on this thing that, you know, if we're gonna fix something, so something else will be fixed as a result of it. And I'm also concerned that, you know, this is looking at like how history is developing or developed. It seems that this was sometimes, or most of the time, was kind of the narrative that, like, if we will do that, so this will fix. And I'm really wondering, like, you know, what is the where do you think that this, like, where's the bottom of it? Like, where can we actually like regenerate it, but from the core? Like,
maybe I just can give some more example of what you said about the issue between Israel and Palestine, and the fact that Jewish people are people, if we can put it in that basket, are the people who have suffered a lot, and now they are posing suffering on others. We can see it actually in every place in this world and every time in history. Why we have a racism issue nowadays in South Africa against white Africans. You know, for decades, for ages, it was the other way around. So you don't expect such a thing to happen over there. Or I don't know why Polish society is against refugees, although 70 years ago they were refugees all over this planet. And now they don't want to take anyone in. So it goes back again now to the point that now I have something and I have to protect it, because with rights, with privileges, comes the feeling of protection. I have to protect it. And for Israel, it's the same. Never, we will not let it happen again. That's why we send our boys, our girls to the military to learn how to fight back, because we don't want to have the similar experience that we had. So it's actually a vicious circle.
And that I completely agree with you. And that really brings me also to another question I would like to ask you all. What part fear, in your opinion, plays in order to create systemic change? Like what, if we look at it from a more like sustainable perspective, so how do you see fear plays in actually like a change agent?
Fear as a change agent, when refer to the things that were presented here in this discussion, or fear when we look into the future?
Well, like in sense that like fear, you know, there is this fear creates the need of actually protecting your environment and your community. Mm-hmm. So do you have any idea like how in the future we can reduce this fear of people not be scared that like their place is going to be taken, and then they will be more open and more inclusive towards other people?
Yeah, thank you for pointing this out, because again, like I think you can't create a future with just kind of looking back what has been done in the history, and you can't solve the problem of tomorrow with the answers that you have kind of gained in the past, or with the solution that you have applied in the past. And that's why, again, like I'm a strong believer that we won't have those scenarios to that extent that we know from the past, because we're getting more educated, and it's our responsibility, our individual kind of responsibility, to kind of help people around us understand, okay, maybe how to distinguish fake news from real news. That's even one of the biggest problems I personally feel happening to our society. And I think that's the first thing we need to do. And then also totally bringing up and showcasing where across the world communities have created this open kind of society, almost like there was Taiwan, for instance. They do a great job in enabling their rural communities to self-empower them, to kind of live on autark energy systems. They have an open sourced policy system, almost like they're incorporating a lot of different perspectives from people who can voluntarily sign up to their open governmental platform to co-create solutions. And even here in Germany, I can only speak for Germany, so like giving good examples from Germany, but we are also kind of trying to adapt to those co-creation civil/governmental platforms, which helps a lot, I think. And so and with digital communications and virtual platforms like we have now, those examples can spread so easily and quicker and faster, and they can be really powerful when it comes to inspiring, like this is actually a desirable setup or a desirable future that I would love to have for myself in my country or in my community.
Before Mahan jumps in, I just want a side note, like to everyone say hi to our little panelist. Like not little, sorry. Yeah, I meant young Padawan, but then yeah.
Sure, I just make a minor comment. Sorry, and again, I'm in disagreement with you.
That's absolutely fine. I mean, like, these things are really too complex to get yes or no.
No, I certainly strongly disagree with you on your first point, saying that you believe that those things which happened in the past will not happen in the future because we have improved or we have developed. No, I think currently we are seeing the things that we maybe much more horrible things that we saw during the Second World War, but it doesn't happen in our backyard. It happens way away from us, and it doesn't get to the media, and we cannot see them. And what happened in, for example, Myanmar, it wasn't less than what happened in the Second World War. What happens nowadays in China, when in terms of Uyghurs, it's not.
Can I just jump into, because
sure.
really, like I'm like, when I look at those really horrible and crucial things happening across the world, I'm just like, hey, who is on top of those countries? Who are the people giving into those kind of scenarios? Who are those people in power? And I'm sorry, but it's men. And
Aung San Suu Kyi in Myanmar as a Nobel Peace Prize winner is not a man. She is a subject to that political machine, which swallows everyone. Doesn't matter if you're man, a woman, or transgender. You know, it swallows you because it contains power. It's representative of power, and you become a monster when they give you power. It doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. And that is probably the issue. But anyways, one is that, and the other is the fact that sorry, I forgot what to say.
Sorry.
No, what did you say? I think I wanted to say something about Shay's, or what Shay said, but maybe I get back to that. But anyways, that was my disagreement, but maybe it come back to me and I can say something about it.
I'm truly hopeful, seriously. Sometimes I'm telling people like, I'm too romantic to be romantic, because I still believe in the good in people. But to your point, like, it's like once people gaining power, or if they have money, and governments and economies are super kind of tight, and they have been tight for ages, like since the beginning. And that's really when there is a disproportion, and where is too much connection of both, then it's not healthy for society.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I just remembered what I wanted to say. That was about that was about the fear that Shay mentioned. Yes, I believe that it's a very big factor, and that is the factor in my point of view. Because if you go, for example, nowadays in India, in Pakistan, where the racial tensions and ethnical tensions are rising, for example, Muslims versus Hindus, they all have horrible history lessons to tell you about their rival group, the next village. Or I'm sure if you go to Africa, if you go to countries which currently experience genocide, you are going to hear horrible stories about fear, basically. And I strongly believe, at the same time, I make it short so we can pass it. I strongly believe that the role of media is very important in reproducing that fear and showing us that fear. Currently, we are experiencing a big movement, BLM, which came to power after the horrible death of George Floyd. We saw it. We all felt afraid by seeing that an innocent man is dying in the hand of police. So we reacted to it by coming to the street, for example. But at the same time, 2 weeks ago, we had another incident in France. A Muslim fanatic just cut the head of a history teacher. And in my point of view, we didn't react to that that much, or at any, if we did any. And the reason was that we didn't see that. We didn't simply become afraid of it somehow, because it wasn't pure happening in front of us. So the media and the fact that we should see to fear it is very important.
Can I also quickly add something?
Yes, Nasra.
Hi. Yes, can I quickly add something?
Basadi, sure. And Nasra can.
Yeah, I definitely I'm also skewed towards communication and education going forward, in terms of how we could build solidarity, right? So right now, in this moment of BLM, I think there's a lot of actors that have not traditionally been heard, that at this very moment, perhaps those are the voices that add on a different aspect to the story. And those are the voices that, as a person who is looking forward to instilling any kind of change, perhaps those are the people that we need to listen to, right? We need to experience, we need to, we need to listen to other people's experiences, and acknowledge them as such, right? We cannot dictate how people, for example, how people talk about their traumas, right? Because there's a lot of learning there as people articulate their experiences to us, especially the voices of people that have not been heard before, right? If we're talking, for example, about white women, Black women, at this very moment on social media, which has become a very, very powerful tool in this moment of great change, there's a lot of voices there, for example, that are, telling their stories and telling, in some ways, I guess, like mapping a way forward, So I think that's also very important when you think about how are we gonna, build solidarity with each other. We cannot expect change from the same actors and from the same systems that are responsible for the turmoil in the first place. So I think like a diversity in the stories that we hear. Every time you're in a room, every time you are in a classroom and you look around you and you're thinking, hey, there's like only people that look like me, then you should be concerned, because then that means that you're not getting like a diversity of perspectives. So it's very, very important that we, give space when as moments arise. It's very important that we don't try to bury the stories of others, but we, listen very intently, because those are the lessons that one or the other are also informing how we can move forward. So that's just like my take on the matter. And I also like to say I am very, very happy to have joined in this conversation. Unfortunately, I have to leave. I wish I could stay for the rest of it. But thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate all the insights from the different panelists. And I also like to thank the students very much for, giving us this platform to be in dialogue and community with them.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Basadi. And on her way out, I do want to mention and highlight Nasra a little bit. Our young Padawan would have a question for you guys, possibly.
I just wanted to actually add on what you were talking about, Shay, and fear of change. And I was thinking that fear is like inevitable when it comes to that, especially when it's people that gain from systems that oppress others. So the fear will come from the fact that there will have to be some sort of radicalism for change to happen. And that will mean that the comfort you do find from these systems will have to change and will have to some extent disappear. And I guess that fear can only be subdued in a way as long as you accept that radicalism is a a tool for that, or is going to be a solution to that, or some sort of like method to use for the needed change, or the expected change, if that makes sense. So kind of what you said, Mahan, that fear is a big thing when it comes to this, and when it comes to changing systems that are grounded in such established points that only benefit one part of society. Yep.
I'm wondering, I really would like to challenge this in a way that, like, I really wonder if you and also all the rest of the people, like, if you think that fear, from a sustainable perspective, if it's sustainable, like, I definitely agree with you that it is playing a big role in actually changing systems and moving and rebalancing them. But I'm curious, like, to look at it from a very long-term perspective, from more sustainable perspective, and figure out, like, is this even creating any benefit for the long run? In your opinion?
I'm not sure if I got the question. If you can just reformulate it.
Yeah, so I think we all agree that fear could and is being used as a way to change systems, and that it's a valid tool for it. Like, it's valid, and people are like able to use it. But I'm wondering, like, from your opinion, like, if you think that, if we need to look at society and human nature in the long term, from a sustainable perspective of how to actually coexist in this world all together, especially as a more connected global community, do you think that fear should be still used as a tool for balancing systems or for restructuring them? Is this clear?
That's definitely my hope, that it's not going to be the narrative even in the future, because, like, even the people here left in the chat, we are all educated, and we have the power to kind of, with our daily actions, with our tools at hand, with our platforms that we use, and reach a global audience, we can actually change that. And I'm really a big fan of rather inspiring a desirable future that benefits the majority, and hopefully even all of us, than kind of tapping back into the fear that is almost like survival mode. Because then you don't create a future that is really made for everyone. You kind of create the same closed systems that kind of led in the past to where we are right now. And I think the younger generations, they sense it, and they want to kind of do something about it. And it's sometimes when I look, for instance, in the business context, where there is a lot of, the majority of people sitting at positions in power are old white men. And even, I'm sorry to say so, but even they will go at some point. They will be retired. And my hope is really that until then, they not let in the same type of people into the role that they leave behind, but that there is this understanding that diversity, no matter if it's a gender diversity aspect or it's cultural diversity aspect, that this will actually help to specifically in very volatile futures, help create a very strong and resilient system. Because you need to be flexible, and flexibility, you can leverage on flexibility and accelerate flexibility once you have a different tool set, aka different perspectives from different types of people. And that creates resilience. And no matter if it's economics, no matter if it's policy, no matter if it's the health system, you really need to kind of think and act that way. And I think people slowly but surely understand it. And they can start by incorporating this already in their community, meaning even though we are, let's say we are here in this town together, there are so many different perspectives, but we need to make sure that they are heard.
Can I comment on the question and also what you said? I think, first of all, the fear is not only the element of change. Sometimes, and most of the time, is the element to not change. We fear something and we become conservative. We don't want to change it. We like the status quo because it's not threatening. So that is considerable as well. But coming back to what you said, Nadine, I think fear is good. I think, as we said, it's coming from the survival instinct that we have, and when we are afraid, it means that we are extra cautious about something and we are protecting ourselves. But how we can change the course of history and not be afraid of each other, I think the threat should be eliminated. As long as Arabs and Jews want to kill each other, of course they hate each other, because they are posing threat to each other. As long as Muslims and Hindus are willing to kill each other, of course they are a threat, and they are going to be fearful of each other. So if we can eliminate the threat through education is part of it. Of course, showing that, okay, Jews and Arabs are not coming from two different planets, although the text says that they're coming from two different, fathers. But anyways, we can put that aside. But for now, we can say that we are all DNA, we are all flesh and bones, and but we can focus on. But how we can change that? Maybe we can shift the focus on another threat. Actually, nowadays, it's a very good momentum because we are facing a bigger threat than human beings, which is a tiny virus. And maybe that can help us to unify. It's somehow like a Game of Thrones. All those, kingdoms should unite to fight against the Nightwalkers, because there is a bigger threat. So the same concept should happen here in this world. Instead of fearing each other, we should fear something bigger. And again, as the last point, I really don't think that if we change the top figures from men to women, we are gonna change the course of history. No, again, we are all human. I strongly believe that if we change the women's rights to human rights and discuss it under that flag, we can achieve more than now just dividing, or sometimes in many cases, putting men versus women or women versus men. If we can say that we are all human and we are advocating for our rights, it's going to be more beneficial. But anyways, changing that figure is not going to help anything. The mindset should be changed, because then again, we put a woman in top in a company or in a state, and then she is afraid of many other different things, or she hates many other different things, and she's gonna be prejudiced against them, So it's gonna be the same thing, because it comes from our instinct as human beings and animals, first of all.
Well said, very well said. Thank you, Mahan. And since we are I'm actually looking at time, we're almost 50 minutes past the planned time, which means it's a very good conversation going on. And I love the healthy disagreement, but this is what perspective should be about. If everyone were to be agreeing on the same note at all time, then to me it's a problem. But before we, of course, close the panel, we have one more question for all of you here and on the panel. And if any student out there would like to also jump on to answer to this question, please feel free to turn on your video. The last one, and we'll close the panel at 18. So I think maybe Shay and I also have a question. For me, one advice, maybe we can have two questions then. My question first. Like one advice could change maker do differently? What are the current change makers doing today that possibly are wrong or not enough, not good enough? So what is the one thing that the change makers could do differently? And maybe from Nasra as well, what is the hope that you wish to see from the people who are doing change could do differently?
I think that it kind of resonates back to the point I made about individuals creating and telling their own narratives, and how it's important to lift those voices and give space to those voices who are experiencing some sort of oppression, for example. So change makers, well, I guess, I don't know, on an individual level, I would say that if you are, for instance, a designer, then maybe you should try to work with the people that you are trying to help. So instead of you creating your own assumptions of what is the issue, and then therefore not maybe, how do I say this? Not lifting the issue in the right issue, then maybe you could help give space or create a platform for people that are part of this group that you're trying to help to raise their own perspective and raise their own voices. And maybe that. And what did you say about the hope?
Very good.
Thing?
Thank you for sharing, Nasra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want
to add on it? And maybe it's like a bit on what Nasra talked about, because I think by also involving like different voices, like we also have to look at ourselves, I think, as society, individuals as well, like, am I willing to give up some of my power to let someone else in the room? And I think often we think we want to, but probably we're not willing to do it. Like, it sounds good on paper, but like, I'm thinking even for me, like, I can say Black woman, this and that, but I do also have lots of privilege. Am I willing to give up that privilege for someone else to have more space, more power? I think that's a question we should ask ourselves also.
To build on that, do you think that like it's either or, like in sense that like in order for you to help someone else to gain more power, you need to lose your power?
I think with the system we have now, which is a bit dog eat dog and capitalism and all that, I think that's a bit how it has to be, because we haven't created yet a system where a lot of people can exist at the same time.
I think the terminology is problematic. The terminology that you used caused problem. You said in order to gain power, someone should lose power.
Exactly.
But if we change the terminology to rights and privileges, we can solve this issue. Because then it's not about power anymore. It's about you giving up some privileges in order to give some other people more rights.
And I totally agree with you. I think that's a really good point. And I think maybe like, I'm not going to talk for everyone, but for me, like when we talk about power, it's like something I have to have, and maybe not a privilege that I need to share with other people. So that's a very good point. Yeah.
That's actually bringing me to first, before the last question, thinking of what you were saying, that because we're living in a capitalistic system, it's very interesting to also think that, capitalism in its nature was built on the idea that if I will make more money, that people will be able to, if I will make more money, that will move the economy, and then more people will be able to share this to buy from me, and then their lives will be improved. So this is how they will also gain more power. So it's also interesting to look at it from this perspective and think like, what went wrong throughout history that we arrived to this point. And that really brings me for a more, I would say, systematic point of view. So what do you think? Oh, sorry for that. What do you think should be the first step for creating a regenerative system for society, that instead of like discussing how to solve problems, we are actually like building up the capacity of the system for bringing in more opinions and more diversity?
Honestly, my suggestion is to read John Rawls and read John Rawls and read John Rawls, because he is the only person who can take us out of this darkness in terms of the privileges that we have, and it's unevenly distributed. So just for a short introduction, his political idea is that the state should act as an invisible hand to distribute and manage the privileges. So privileges are not bad. We are not like the way that communism is talking about it, distribution of the wealth and everything. No, privileges is not bad. Privileges is needed, but it should be managed. So his idea is to put everyone behind the so-called veil of ignorance, so they don't know how they are gonna receive those privileges, and the state empower those who are underprivileged and also control those who have over privileges to not manipulate the whole system. I will put his name in the chat box so everyone who is interested can refer to.
And Nadine, have you shared your advice? And because also for everyone,
there were too many questions. Meanwhile, it's like three questions in one.
it branches out. That's how we stretch for an hour.
Which one do you want me to maybe tackle? And like advice for change makers?
Yes.
What I don't see, what I would recommend not staying in your own community only or in your own industry, and to really kind of go outside, because that's where you can kind of create allies with people who might not directly be involved in the topic that you're kind of try to address or the problem that you want to solve, but they can advocate for you within their own communities. So you can create network effects way more effective and way more powerful than you would do if you only kind of create and share your beliefs and stories with your own kind of community who have already or who share already the same belief systems and values. That's really what I kind of experience a lot of from the tactical kind of level.
Thank you so much. And since because this is a very exciting discussion, I have not stepped out of my couch for 8 hours or even the last 3 hours to the toilet. But I just want to comment, thank you so much for your time. It's 2 minutes to 6, and this is the least. Hi, you have a question, but we might not have the question, but I like it that you pop in to say hi. So I just want us to check out on this topic before everyone leaves, people whom are on the silent spectators, just one word, after this whole day of listening to all the different lectures and listening to this discussion, could you check out what is your top, just one word, your perception of power? What does it mean for you? and just type it in the chat. And as for the panelists, you can say that in a statement. The meaning of power to you.
In a word, I can say it in a word, maybe.
In a statement.
In a statement or a word?
In a statement, then.
Okay, that is different. Okay, power to me is the agency to exercise my freedom.
Thank you.
Oh, Pebbles, I'm so bad with those things because it's again like too complex, and my mind is like exploding. But I think like the essence of power is knowing that something works or that you have capabilities and use them for the right or wrong way. That's kind of the essence, so to speak. But I think, and I hope that more people always vote for the good outcome.
Okay, I can share mine. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you. My word for power, my meaning of power would be compassion.
I'm going to steal yours, Pebbles, because I can't come up with something. Compassion as well. I'm so sorry.
No worry.
I do think it's very good. Yeah.
Okay, I also want to thank you all for listening to us. And as I said in the morning as well, feel free to be in touch with me. You can find me on Facebook. I think you received my email address as well, somewhere. So just drop me an email or find me on Facebook and drop a message. I will be more than happy to be in touch and discuss with you.
Yes,
thank you as well, the Hyper Island team. It was very, very, very good experience, especially for me, discussing and also presenting to your good students. And yeah, I'm looking forward to do it more.
Thank you so much, Mahan. And I guess with such, if Nadine does not have a one statement, it's fine.
I just wanted to add on, because I also need to leave now.
And we're going to close the panel. So
yeah, it was a real pleasure to have this conversation. And again, like, it's too complex to really nail everything here in that short time. But I hope we all could inspire and kind of change perspectives in one way or the other. And yeah, I'm looking really into all those future works that specifically comes from the hyper students, because it's really one of those very cool universities and kind of learning experiences that really can create change makers that we so desperately need. Thank you all.
That's what we believe in, right? Yes, thank you very much for today and everyone here. So finally, we're gonna wrap up. Thank you. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.